Shalom from Jerusalem. This is TV7's Israel at War update. And in today's program, we will continue to focus predominantly on the Iranian theater, the Israel Defense Forces, alongside the U.S. Central Command, are being vigorous, degrading further the Islamic Republic's various military installations, their ballistic missile capabilities, and quite frankly, their ability to wage war, with a sharp drop in both ballistic missile fire as well as the one-way unmanned aerial vehicles being able to be launched, alongside also the shrinking, if I may call it that, navy of the Islamic Republic. Now, naturally, we know more about what's happening with both the U.S. military and the Israeli military. The intelligence apparatus operating in low signature is something that we do not really have much insight into, and for good reason, obviously. But there is room for speculation, and there are plenty of events taking place that are catching the Ayatollah regime by surprise. Now, to what degree is this truly destabilizing this terror regime in Tehran? We will try and dissect it further. Before all that, let's introduce our guest for today, to include all the way from Washington, D.C., as retired Colonel Joel Rayburn, formerly a senior director at the U.S. National Security Council for the Middle East and North Africa, currently a senior fellow at Hudson Institute. It's a pleasure to have you with us, Joel. And also from Central Israel is Brigadier General in Reserve Amnon Sofrin, formerly the Chief of Intelligence at the Mossad Intelligence Agency, as well as a senior officer at the IDF Intelligence Directorate. And it's a pleasure to have you both with us. And I'd like actually to start with you, Colonel Rayburn. When we're talking about the destabilizing factor that is catching the Iranians by surprise, obviously war is a battle of wits, a battle of deception in most cases. And the Ayatollah regime, which is subject to immense destabilizing factors, from strong power all the way to soft power operations, it still seems like it is trying to somehow stay in the fight.
Well, thank you, Jonathan. Yes, they're attempting still to use their strike capabilities. Their strike capabilities, as you just noted, are diminishing rapidly. They're going to get to the point where really all they're able to do with ballistic missiles and drones is harass and send sporadic launches from time to time, and even those will be suppressed over time. I think the other thing that's within sight is the effective end of their air defense, even in local areas. I know there are still some parts of Iran where they have essentially local air defense, but it's bordering. You notice no one in the Pentagon or on the Israeli side has come out and used the term air supremacy, but they're really on the verge of that, where essentially Israeli and U.S. aircraft can fly completely freely, or at least above a certain altitude, over any part of Iran that they want to. And that means I just don't think the regime is going to be able to continue to function when the enemy air force is flying freely anywhere overhead. For them to, even now, for example, we're hearing, we see the reports coming from sources inside the regime that are indicating that they're having trouble deciding, for example, to schedule Supreme Leader Khamenei's funeral. Because they're under too much pressure. There's a debate inside about that. There's a debate inside about, can they even meet to deliberate choosing a new leader? Things like that. Certainly, they can't function as a government. They're not governing. They're not performing any of the essential functions as a state. So this has essentially paralyzed them. I think under those circumstances, it's very different from Hamas in Gaza. Hamas in Gaza was not having to defend a state. Hezbollah in Lebanon doesn't have to defend a state and function as a state. This is a very different scenario that we're seeing. The Iranian regime essentially has to function as a state, or it collapses and it loses its grip nationwide. I think that's really what is going to happen.
Thank you, Colonel Rayburn. General Sofrin, I'd like to ask you, last night we had Dr. Eyal Khulata, a colleague of ours who formerly served as a Mossad division chief as well as a national security advisor here in Israel, who was interviewed on a major American network, during the course of which he stated that the Ayatollah regime is far weaker than we may think. What is your observation of this?
I don't want to measure how weak it is, but certainly it is weaker than it used to be some, let's say, a week ago. The fact that the supreme leader is demolished or killed, together with all the senior officers of the RGC and the armed forces and the Minister of Defense. The fact that they didn't elect so far, even though there are rumors that they elected Mujtaba, the son of late Khamenei, to be the supreme leader, the next supreme leader, but it's not verified. And President Trump just a few minutes ago stated that for him, he will not settle only with what we call total surrender of Iran. That means that Iran will give up, wave the white flag, and he will be part of, or will have a lot of influence on who is going to be the next leader, or electing who is going to be, or nominating who is going to be the next leader together with the allies. And this is a little bit ambitious because it cannot force a country to nominate or to elect somebody who is elected by somebody from the outside. Certainly not in a country like Iran, which has a lot of pride and a lot of history, and it's proud of its own history of 3,000 years of being what we call an empire. And this is something that looks a little bit unfeasible for the time being. But yet, of course, the regime now is weaker. Let's say that the fact that we attacked together, of course, with the US aircraft, all these installations and the garrisons of the IRGC and the Basij and police officers and police stations and so on, that means that these are the people that have to control the city or the country, sorry, and to deny any demonstration and any attempt to try to make something bad for this regime. And of course, now it's weaker and it is exposed to a lot of attacks without being able, just Colonel Reben mentioned a minute ago, they don't have the ability to attack, to protect themselves very efficiently because of all of their anti-aircraft systems were demolished. Therefore, Iran is exposed now to being almost destroyed if they don't decide to give up and make concessions and wave the white flag and say, okay, let's go and begin negotiations.
Indeed. Well, I will say that attributing the 3,000 years of truly rich history that the Persians had in this territory, um, it's a little far-fetched to attribute that to this Ayatollah regime in Tehran, which has merely been there less than 50 years, and their radical ideology and their aspirations of expansionist, revolutionary ideals of 12 Shia Islam is not something that is quite natural for this 3,000-year type of monarchy or whatever you want to define it. But nonetheless, the complexities that the Ayatollah regime is currently dealing with, let alone a large group of Iranians in Iran proper that are very dismayed and have gone by the millions out to the streets to protest for regime change, is quite different than other historical circumstances. And it seems like that the United States and Israel are poised to ratchet up the firepower that they intend to introduce into the theater. Colonel Rayburn, how much stronger can it become?
How much stronger can the campaign become? You mean?
Yeah.
Uh, well, it's getting stronger day by day because as the air defenses have been taken out, And we're seeing the estimates now come out of the Pentagon and the Israeli side that the air defenses have been reduced by 80%. And so they're getting down to the point where they're negligible. That means that key sites no longer have to be struck just with standoff munitions, which are few in number and often smaller payload. But now the Central Command is sending B-52s even over targets, which carry huge payloads, have an almost inexhaustible supply of munitions, and can use JDAMs and so on, and really have an enormous additional effect. That will have a very significant impact. I mean, the firepower then is increasing on the U.S. and Israeli side, so they're going to be able to attack a lot more targets a lot more effectively going forward. That's what happens when you get to that stage of air supremacy. So I think ultimately it also means that there's a very long target list on both the Israeli and the U.S. side to take out the kind of military capabilities the Iranians have that pose a threat to Israel, pose a threat to the Gulf states, and pose a threat beyond Iran's borders. At some point, that they're going to move down the target list and begin getting very deeply into the kinds of targets that pose a threat not outside the borders but to the Iranian people. How long the campaign extends, to what degree the U.S. and Israel can take out those kind of targets, really disrupt those kind of targets, that's going to have an impact on how effectively a popular uprising could take place. And even if the Iranian population in City X or the environments of Tehran are seeing the besiege and the local security forces disrupted, their infrastructure attacked, not able to assemble, that's going to make them more likely to come out in the street as they did in January. And I think at that stage, be able to begin to overwhelm certain cities or areas so they fall out of regime control. And at that stage, the U.S. and Israel are going to need to make a decision about whether they continue flying to enforce a no-fly zone and to enforce a prohibition on Iranian military movements on the ground, so that in order to prevent the regime from being able to move forces from one part of the country to cover hotspots in other parts of the country. If that could be achieved, then I think the regime would essentially be finished.
Absolutely. General Sofrian, I'd like to hear your take on that as well, since despite skepticism, which we know that there is some skepticism about prospects for regime change or the fall of the regime, what happens afterwards, we cannot necessarily predict at this point in time. There are plenty of cases that both aerial power, be it the Serbia case in the late 90s, and artillery powers, be it in other type of circumstances in Europe and elsewhere, have brought about the capitulation of governments. Is this a scenario that could be analogized to a certain degree?
The main question is how long time is it going to last? That means that to take down or to topple the regime and make a regime change may take a very long time. It's not something that can be done within a week or 2 or 3. It can take even some months. That means that everything that Colonel Rayburn just referred to, I will add to that two more facts. The fact that Iran is engaging all its neighboring countries, including Azerbaijan just yesterday, which has a lot of things to do in common with Israel. And Azerbaijan doesn't give up very quickly and is aiming to respond in some way. Now, if you begin to have a combination of internal pressure coming out from the people, even though I don't see the people coming out to the streets right now, because they're afraid of the power of the IRGC, the Basij, and all the other mechanisms inside Israel. Right? So they're not in the street right now. And even if they go out of the street, they need to have what we call some military power to support them. And they don't have it right now. Unless if part of the armed forces will begin deserting and moving to their side and supporting them, they will have enough weapon systems to begin to make something more dramatically change than the situation right now. But
So, in
if
that
you add
general,
that,
if I may briefly, the defections from the RGC and Basij, I've been talking to certain people dealing with this issue, and there is a growing number of defections of various elements that are refusing also to return to the line of duty in light of true fear of retribution. Now, to what degree can you vet those type of individuals who are keen, at least overtly or publicly, to desert and move to the other side, to avoid a scenario in which these might be RGC moles trying to disrupt the other side?
I don't see the RGC in total breaking out. Even though some people may desert and move to the other side, it's not enough. Because the RGC are the main power within Iran. They have a lot of economic interests inside Iran and a lot of projects that give them a lot of income for their own support. And they're controlling all the what they call advanced weapon systems in Iran. So they won't give up this power very easily. And to see them breaking out within a week or 2 or 3 weeks, it's not something that I can consider can be achieved right now in this short period of
Indeed.
time. But if you add the inside unrest inside Iran, together with, let's say, the fact that the Azerbaijan armed forces will begin making something on the border between Iran and Azerbaijan, on one hand. On the other hand, maybe the Emirates and the Saudi Arabia and other neighboring countries will try to pay back in a way under the American and Israeli umbrella. And the whole combination of that can make what we call a huge wave, but it will take time. That
So
means
let's
it
ask.
won't be achieved. It won't be achieved within a week or 2 or 3 weeks. That may
Indeed.
take months.
As Secretary of War Pete Hegseth said, they own the clock and they have the capacity to drag this on to the point of achieving the goals and the objectives that the president has set forth to U.S. Central Command. On that, Colonel Rayburn, the objectives are quite clear. Admiral Brad Cooper, commander of CENTCOM, came out and stated quite openly that they have received a very broad mandate to ensure the fulfillment of the clear objectives that were set forth. And within that context, what degree can you see the neighboring countries also joining in and contributing to bringing about the desired outcome, particularly having now Azerbaijan, after being hit, of course, thankfully, there weren't bodily injuries as far as I know, but nonetheless, this was a breach of sovereignty, and President Ilham Aliyev came out and stated, or rather instructed the military to prepare for an offensive operation. Is that something that we could see, potentially neighboring countries now invading or joining the aerial campaign as is?
You could see some of that if the Iranian regime continues on what is this really crazy strategy that they've adopted in the outset of attacking all of the neighboring countries, even the countries that, I mean, vast majority of the countries around Iran were, they expected a confrontation, they anticipated it, and they had no intention of joining it. The Arab countries in particular wanted to stay on the sidelines, not get involved so as not to risk the kind of attacks on their cities as suffering, and the Iranians hit them anyway. So, I mean, that has really changed the political winds in the region. And the Azerbaijanis have quite a potent military. They have a great deal of Turkish support. So if the Iranians really were to double down and continue launching strikes into Azerbaijan, yes, you could see them do some sort of local operation at the border to establish a security zone or something like that. I don't see the surrounding nations getting involved in the kind of things that the U.S. and Israeli air forces are doing, but they don't need to right now. What is probably happening, though, and we get glimpses of this, is that those countries are probably now allowing airspace access. They're probably now providing logistical and other operational support, which is very important. That's just as important to a campaign like this as the actual aircrafts that are carrying out the bombing runs. So to be able to provide reconnaissance, surveillance, and this other kind of logistical support, I think they're now turning to be in it in a way that they hadn't planned to do at the outset. So it's really backfired, this Iranian strategy. Not to mention the political implications of it for if the dust does settle on the Iranian regime. They will have remember the last several years, the Iranians in the Gulf countries were moving into kind of rapprochement, some of that brokered by China. And that's all fallen apart. And remember, that was the Iranians considered that to be a political counterbalance, counter initiative to the Abraham Accords. Right. That's now fallen completely apart. And you're seeing the U.S., Israel, and the Gulf states in closer security coordination, I think, than ever before.
So let me ask you on this, because obviously the United States and Israel have no daylight between them when it comes to the Islamic Republic of Iran. Nevertheless, Israel is a regional power, and the United States has also geostrategic concerns on the strategic power competition level, which Israel has, but as a, albeit secondary actor, or even within that context of a secondary actor, seeking to assist the United States and really choosing the side of the United States, which has shown also the true face of China, where it cut all ties with the State of Israel on October 7th for more than a year, up until the first conversation between the then Israeli Foreign Minister Israel Katz and the State Counselor of China, Wang Yi. But right now, the United States is looking at this, and if we map the Middle East for a moment within the broader scheme of geostrategic power competition, the fall of the Ayatollah regime would reshuffle the world order, so to speak, and actually set the United States at course of once again potentially becoming the unipolar dominant power of the world.
Well, I wouldn't go that far yet, but it certainly it would be an enormous setback for this coalition that's been gathering for a number of years of China, Russia, Iran, North Korea, along with their junior clients, the Assad regime, now no more, the Maduro regime, to some degree the Cuban regime. So it's a huge setback to that strategic coalition, which has been challenging the U.S. and its allies really for control of the 21st century, for preeminence in the 21st century. It's a big, big setback. You are absolutely right.
General Sofrin, we have roughly 3 minutes and 45 seconds, and I'd like both of you actually to have a closing statement, but General Sofrin, we'll start with you.
I think that we have to look at the broader picture. It's not only the fact that Israel and the U.S. Air Force and U.S. troops, are attacking Iran or engaging Iran, because we're having problems right now with the Hezbollah in Lebanon that joined against all ratio and against all odds, engaging the northern part of Israel and attacking even at the center of Israel, and they won't give up. The Houthis are still not involved, but may take an action, especially on the Red Sea, but not only on the routes of navigation of the Red Sea, but as well against Israel as well. And we know that the pro-Iranian militias in Iraq engaged some garrisons or American garrisons in the Middle East. That means that this is some kind of a larger war than we had about 8 months ago. If you compare it to Rising Lion, this is a broader picture right now. And if you add to that the fact that there are rumors that the Russians are supporting Iran with intelligence and pointing out American assets on the Middle East for them to be able to hit them, that means this is something that is beyond the Middle East, and it's becoming what we call a global conflict that is getting what we call larger and larger every minute that we speak right now.
Indeed. Thank you, General Sofrin. Colonel Rayburn, the point added by General Sofrin about Russia, I think, is vital to understand. We heard also the European Union High Representative for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy, Kaja Kallas, coming out and stating to Gulf nations, use Ukraine. It has a lot of experience when it comes to the Shahed 136 drones, and they can assist you in many ways, which they already are doing, consultations and maybe even more than that. But looking at this broader scheme of things and also taking into account what was just noted, Ansar Allah, which is dominated by the Houthi tribe in Yemen, has yet to join the war. Does this mean that they are waiting on the sidelines for a potential deterrent to frustrate the Gulf Arab countries from entering into the conflict?
I don't think so. I think more when you look across the axis of resistance, the elements of it that are remaining that have any capacity. So let's rule out Hamas, let's rule out Islamic Jihad. You have the Iraqi militias, you have what's left of Lebanese Hezbollah, you have the Houthis. So the elements in there, you can really divide them in two categories. I think the ones that are more inclined to fight are those that have no future in their respective countries if the Iranian regime goes down. The ones that have local base of support that is going to survive, even if the Iranian regime doesn't survive, those are less likely to dive in. And you can see that happening. There's a difference. So you see a fracturing right now in Iraq between the kind of Kataib Hezbollah has no future in Iraq. They owe their power in Iraq solely to IRGC support. There are a couple of other militias like that, but there are some other militias that are in local political power. They have members of parliament. They have a lot of revenues and so on. You see them more hanging back. The Houthis, I would put in that category as well. The Houthis might calculate that they have a fair shot at surviving, even if without Iranian support. So I don't think they're going to be that willing to take suicidal steps to save
Closing
a regime.
sentence.
To save a regime that's probably going down anyway.
Colonel Joel Rayburn and General Amnon Sofrin, thank you very much for all of your insights today. I'd like also to thank you at home and wish you a Shabbat Shalom v'Shaket, a quiet one, until our next edition. Shalom.
Jerusalem Studio, now available on Spotify.